And we have with us Ken Pittman and Chris McCarthy. Both, of course, are with us every Saturday from 9 to noon right here on WBSM. And these guys have done some digging into remarks made by Hillary Clinton, Secretary Hillary Clinton, who, of course, is the Democrat nominee for president. In her address accepting that nomination on Thursday night, she talked about how she worked for the Children's Defense Fund, going door-to-door in New Bedford, Massachusetts, on behalf of children with disabilities who were denied, she says, the chance to go to school. These guys say that's a crock of baloney. They've been investigating it since her remarks. And you guys really just, for those folks who might be just tuning in right now, you were the first one, Chris, to really catch something wrong here. What was it again that really caused you to pay attention and say, wait a minute, something's wrong here?
Sure. Well, like every morning, I was listening to Phil Paleologos' show here on WBSM, and they mentioned that Hillary had, given a shout-out to the city of New Bedford, and there were people calling in, and they were discussing that it was a positive development for the city and that she, it was nice that she had mentioned the city. And when I heard how she mentioned it, which was that a handicapped child in a wheelchair was denied education in the public schools, I thought that wasn't a compliment. It was an insult to the city of New Bedford and Greater New Bedford and the people that were running the city at the time. And it also struck me as false, because I know that the city of New Bedford was not discriminating against children in wheelchairs. And this is very specific. She's saying a child in a wheelchair could not get access to the public schools, was denied access.
Was denied access,
right?
Yeah.
There is a story is going back as far as 2008 in the Boston Globe where they're saying that there was no way for the child to get to school. Ken went on and spoke to the former mayor, Jack Markey, who was the mayor at the time. And to understand this, I knew that the mayors at the time were Jack Markey, George Rogers, and Ed Harrington. All Democrats, all progressives, all who cared about children, in my opinion, and I think most people's opinion. So it just rang hollow to me. And then as Ken began investigating it, the truth just all rolled out. That there were services. Totally
I think the key word in this whole thing, the indictable word, is denied.
Right.
When you say can't get access, that's, well, maybe there's a difficult time cutting through tape or whatever. I think denied is the key word here, because she said children with disabilities who were denied the chance. In other words, the school system, according to Hillary Clinton, said, no, you can't go to school here.
She wasn't here to impeach the priorities of the parents. She was here to make a difference with the way government was run. So if there are cultural differences where parents come from a country where you just go to work, education is not as important, but now you're in the United States, that's not what her mission was. The mission of the Children's Defense Fund was to make sure that resources were prioritized for children with disabilities, both physical, mental, and with language barriers. That was the mission of this project. And
she went on in her speech in the next paragraph to say that she changed the laws that allowed kids to get through, and she points out that the woman, Miss Somoza, who was in a wheelchair, crossed the stage to speak prior to Hillary, and she said that she was so proud of that woman, as I think we all were, but because she was able to get an education, because although she was in a wheelchair, because of the laws that Hillary changed. Well, so her implication, obviously, is that the girl in New Bedford couldn't get into the schools because of the laws, and we know that that's not true.
Imagine, if you will, if you're a Hillary Clinton supporter, imagine if Donald Trump tried to suggest that he did something that the good people of New Bedford were already doing, and that without him, these changes would have never taken place.
We'd still have kids sitting on porches today in wheelchairs if it wasn't for Hillary Clinton, is basically what she's saying.
Right. And look, if she had mentioned anywhere else in the world, I wouldn't even have noticed it. It's just that I knew.
Well, Ken, you heard the speech, and it didn't ring. I heard the speech.
I had problems
as well.
with other things in the speech that I was focusing on.
Right, same here. Yeah, and so it didn't really sink in. So once you started talking with Chris about it on the air on Friday, then it began to sink in, and you because I was listening to you guys, and it started to sink in that, wait a minute, she is not telling the truth here. And so you did some digging.
I was doing some radio in Boston that morning. And so I knew I was going to be a few minutes late. I think I alerted you to it, and Chris was on his way. And Chris actually took the airwaves first. So I was a little bit taken back by his perspective that it was a disparaging remark. He wanted to know who else felt that way. That's how the show started. And I started smiling. I go,
it's all my fault.
What is he talking about? Yeah. But then, as he went on, I said, well, geez, he's right. What if this isn't true? What if there were things in place? That's a really lousy remark to say about the infrastructure that was in place, only due to the good hearts of the people of New Bedford.
Look, I just knew, because when you think of New Bedford, it's not a computer, it's not a robot, it's a community that has people in that community that were managing the community at the time, mayors, school committee people, school administrators. These are human beings. I knew a lot of them. One of them was my father. There's no way those people would have prevented a handicapped child from getting into the public schools.
Well, you even mentioned on Friday in your remarks on this on Friday morning about Senator Kennedy. I mean, Senator Kennedy was in office then, and as Ken pointed out, the Commonwealth was already far ahead of a lot of other states, and who was more of a
even in that
progressive Democrat than Ted Kennedy.
Right.
And Barry, one of the important parts to understand here is that I read the report that the Children's Defense Fund put out. I know Ken has read it now as well. In fact, I distributed it to people in the media as the storm, started to erupt. There's no mention of this girl in the wheelchair in the report. There's no mention. There's a mention of transportation problems for schools in America, which would have been the opportunity for the CDF to have reported on New Bedford's transportation problems. But there's no mention of New Bedford's transportation problems in there. There are mentions of other things. For instance, they mention that people from the Azores, at this period of time, the Azores had no compulsory education laws. And so some of them culturally were not as interested in sending their kids to school because where they came from, they didn't have that. That's a cultural thing, not a governmental policy of the New Bedford Public School System.
Let's remember the mission of the Children's Defense Fund at that time. They came to the city of New Bedford to find out why the census suggested there were this amount of kids,
right,
but the school only reported this amount of kids. There was a disparity, so they investigated. It was good work.